History remembers the victors, but it fears the unstoppable. Born in exile, forged in blood, one man united the tribes of the steppe and built the greatest empire the world has ever seen. This is the story of Genghis Khan and the unstoppable Mongol Empire. The birth of a storm. History remembers the victors, but it fears the unstoppable. And long before the world trembled under the thunder of hooves, long before cities fell and kingdoms shattered, a story was unfolding on the vast wind-swept steppe of Central Asia. A story that did not begin with kings, palaces, or armies, but with suffering, hunger, betrayal, and a child. His name was Temujin. The world would one day know him as Genghis Khan, the founder of the largest continuous empire in human history. But before he became a conqueror, he was simply a boy abandoned to the mercy of the wild. Temujin's father, Yesugei, a respected leader, was poisoned by enemies when Temujin was only 9 years old. With his death, the fragile threads holding their family's status together snapped. Their tribe, seeing no benefit in protecting a fatherless child and his family, cast them out to survive alone. Exile in the Mongolian steppe was not a punishment. It was a death sentence. Imagine the scene. A young boy walking across frozen earth, a harsh wind slashing at his face, the world offering him nothing but emptiness. His mother tries to gather roots and scraps to keep the family alive. His siblings cling to survival. Hunger becomes their closest companion. Yet, in the heart of that suffering, something was forming. A will, a fire, a refusal to be erased. Temujin learned early that the world shows no mercy to the weak, so he decided he would never again be weak. The abduction. At an age when most children play, Temujin was learning the cruelty of power. Rival clans captured him, bound him with a heavy wooden collar, and watched him like an animal. They believed they were witnessing the end of a forgotten boy, but they were witnessing a beginning. One night, as the camp slept and the embers dimmed, Temujin tested his bonds. A guard drifted into careless sleep. Temujin moved, slowly, silently, and then he ran. He stumbled down a hillside, the collar cracking against stone. He crawled into a freezing river to hide as searchers swept past with torches. The cold bit into him like knives, but he endured, because the steppe had taught him, you survive or you die. Temujin chose survival. The oath. Years passed. The boy became a young man. Temujin gathered a small group of loyal followers, not through fear, not through inheritance, but through trust. He made promises others had never heard before on the steppe. He vowed to reward loyalty regardless of birth. He vowed to destroy betrayal wherever it hid. He vowed to unite the tribes that had spent centuries tearing each other apart. This was more than ambition. This was a mission forged in childhood pain. Temujin understood something no other leader did. If the Mongols continued to fight each other, they would remain weak forever. Unity was the only path to power. Rising storm. The tribes watched him with suspicion. Some admired him, some feared him, some hated him. But Temujin was unlike any leader they had known. He was charismatic, strategic, and unrelentingly driven. More importantly, he did not rise through bloodline. He rose through merit, and that made him dangerous. This is the world before the empire. This is the quiet before the storm. Because the unstoppable force that would reshape continents was awakening. History remembers the victors, but it fears the unstoppable. And Temujin was about to become the unstoppable, the unifier. History remembers the victors, but it fears the unstoppable. And by now, Temujin was no longer just a survivor. He was a force gathering momentum, quietly, relentlessly, like a storm drawing strength across the endless steppe. Years of hardship had carved him into something unbreakable, but what truly set him apart was not brutality. It was vision. Temujin saw a future no Mongol leader had dared to imagine. A united people, a single banner. Not tribes forever locked in feuds, but a nation powerful enough to reshape the world. This dream, however, would not be achieved through hope. It required war. Blood on the steppe. The first sparks erupted among the rival clans. Some refused to accept Temujin's growing influence. Others feared the loyalty he inspired among warriors from even the lowest social ranks. On the steppe, this was forbidden. Mongol society had long been divided by lineage, wealth, and privilege. But Temujin broke those rules. He elevated men not by their birth, but by their skill, loyalty, and courage. This made him loved by common warriors and hated by noble families, so they formed alliances to destroy him. Temujin responded the only way the steppe respected, with calculated ferocity. His forces struck with speed and precision. He fought not as a traditional tribal chief, but as a strategist who studied every weakness of his enemies. He divided his army into disciplined units, the famous Arbans, Zuns, Mingans, creating an organized force unlike anything the nomads had ever seen. He adopted new tactics, feigned retreats, complex signaling, coordinated cavalry maneuvers. He even integrated captured warriors into his ranks, rewarding loyalty even from those who had once fought against him. Slowly, the balance of power shifted. Temujin was no longer defending himself. He was conquering the betrayals. Yet for every victory, betrayal lurked close. The most devastating came from Jamuka, Temujin's childhood blood brother, the man he once called Anda. They had sworn loyalty to each other as boys. But years changed them. Where Temujin rose through merit, Jamuka clung to aristocratic tradition. And as Temujin attracted more followers, Jamuka's pride twisted into envy. He named himself Khan of the Aristocrats. Temujin was forced into a conflict he had never wanted. Brother against brother. Dream against tradition. Future against past. Their war lasted years. Battles swept across plains and mountains. Jamuka committed brutal acts to intimidate Temujin's supporters, but it only drove more warriors to Temujin's cause. In the end, Jamuka was captured. He accepted his fate calmly, asking only for a noble death, without bloodshed. Temujin honored the request. This moment marked the end of the old Mongol order, and the beginning of something new. The Kurultai of 1206. In the spring of 1206, the tribes gathered on the Onon River for a historic assembly. The Great Kurultai. Warriors from every clan stood together under a single sky. For the first time in centuries, the steppe was united. They proclaimed Temujin as Genghis Khan, universal ruler. In that moment, an empire was born. Not yet the titan it would become, but the foundation had been set. Genghis Khan reorganized his people. He created laws, the yasa, to enforce order. He established a messenger system that could transmit messages across continents. He united nomads, farmers, hunters, blacksmiths, forging them into one unstoppable machine. The world beyond the steppe still slept, unaware of the storm gathering strength. Kingdoms in the east and west lived in comfort, assuming their walls would protect them. They were wrong. Because Genghis Khan now commanded a nation forged by struggle, loyalty, and fire. History remembers the victors, but it fears the unstoppable. And the unstoppable was coming. The world shakes under Mongol hooves. History remembers the victors, but it fears the unstoppable. And now, Genghis Khan was no longer merely a steppe leader. He was a force of nature. A storm that would sweep across continents, reshaping the political landscape forever. By 1206, the Mongol Empire was united under his banner. But conquest was not an instinct, it was a necessity. The tribes were disciplined, loyal, and battle-hardened. The world beyond the steppe, however, was naive. The Western Xia dynasty. To the south lay the Western Xia dynasty. Fortified cities, wealthy merchants, and armies that believed walls could stop the Mongols. They were wrong. Genghis Khan approached with unmatched speed and precision. His army was divided into units of tens, hundreds, and thousands, each capable of independent action, yet moving as a coordinated whole. No city, no army, no alliance could predict his next move. Western Xia cities fell, one by one. Supply lines were cut, reinforcements intercepted, and Genghis's reputation began to spread. The Mongols are unstoppable. They are the wind, the fire, the shadow we cannot escape. The Jin dynasty of northern China. Eastward lay the mighty Jin dynasty. Rulers and generals laughed at the idea of nomads challenging their fortified cities. But the Mongols adapted, learned, and innovated. They captured siege engineers, mastered catapults, and developed sophisticated strategies for urban warfare. Northern China, confident in its wealth and walls, faced starvation, psychological warfare, and relentless attacks. Within months, cities like Zhongdu, the heart of Jin power, fell. The Mongols moved with a combination of speed, coordination, and brutal discipline that no civilization had ever faced. History remembers Genghis Khan as a conqueror. But he was more than that. He was a strategist ahead of his time. The Khwarezm disaster. To the west stretched the Khwarezm Empire, a prosperous kingdom spanning Persia, Central Asia, and beyond. Genghis Khan sought diplomacy. He sent merchants and envoys to open trade and communication. But the Shah of Khwarezm made a fatal miscalculation. He accused the Mongol envoys of espionage, seized their goods, and executed them. Genghis Khan sent ambassadors to negotiate. They were humiliated. One was killed, another had his beard shorn in insult. This was no longer a mere insult. This was a declaration of war. The Mongols responded with overwhelming force. The Genghis divided his army into multiple columns, striking the Khwarezm Empire simultaneously from different directions. Cities that had relied on walls and armies were overrun. Defenders who attempted resistance were annihilated. The Shah fled, pursued relentlessly across deserts and mountains. By the time the dust settled, the empire was erased. The world had never seen such ruthless efficiency. The Mongols did not merely fight, they orchestrated total domination. The scale of destruction was unprecedented, and yet they left a legacy of order and governance in the lands they absorbed. The Mongols had conquered China, Persia, and Central Asia. The borders of the known world were trembling. Europe, the Middle East, and the Far East watched in fear. History remembers the victors, but it fears the unstoppable. Genghis Khan had become more than a leader. He was the embodiment of unstoppable ambition, strategy, and power. The world would never be the same. The world united under Mongol rule. History remembers the victors, but it fears the unstoppable. And the unstoppable, after decades of conquest, had done something even more remarkable than taking land. Genghis Khan and his descendants had created order across one of the largest empires in human history, a land stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the Caspian Sea, from Siberian forests to Persian deserts. This was not only an empire of conquest, it was a network, a civilization, connected by roads, trade, and communication. A world that, for the first time, moved as one. Scene: the Yam. The Mongol Highway. The Mongols built the Yam, a relay system of stations across thousands of miles. At every station, fresh horses, food, and shelter awaited messengers and officials. Orders, intelligence, and news could travel from Beijing to the Caspian Sea in weeks. For centuries, no empire had achieved such rapid communication. The Mongols transformed speed into power. Commanders could strike with precision. Merchants could trade safely. Diplomats could negotiate across continents. This was the backbone of Pax Mongolica. the Mongol peace. Trade and culture flourish. Under Mongol protection, the Silk Road became a superhighway for commerce and ideas. Goods, people, and knowledge flowed freely. Silk and porcelain from China, spices and gems from India, glass and medicine from Persia, textiles and metals from Europe. But the Mongols did more than protect trade. They facilitated cultural exchange. Scholars traveled from Persia to China. Engineers shared technology across continents. Maps, astronomical charts, medicine, and literature spread farther and faster than ever before. Even travelers like Marco Polo experienced a world no European could have imagined. The Mongol Empire, for a time, made the known world feel smaller, connected, and alive. Religious tolerance and law. Unlike many empires, the Mongols did not impose their religion. Buddhism, Christianity, Islam, Taoism, and shamanism coexisted. Temples, churches, mosques, and shrines were protected. Religious diversity became a pillar of Mongol governance. The Yasa, Genghis Khan's legal code, unified the empire under clear laws. It ensured discipline, order, and loyalty, essential for an empire of unprecedented size. For the first time, vast regions of Eurasia were governed not by fear alone, but by structured order, communication, and law. Trade thrived, cities prospered, and innovation spread. A global network before globalization. The Mongol Empire created the first global network. Gunpowder, paper, and medical knowledge moved across continents. Merchants traveled under Mongol protection. Diplomacy stretched from the Mediterranean to the Far East. It was globalization centuries before the word existed. And while the empire would eventually fracture, the connections it created would shape the modern world forever. But even as Pax Mongolica flourished, shadows gathered. Rivalries, distance, and ambition threatened the unity Genghis Khan had forged. History remembers the victors, but it fears the unstoppable. And the unstoppable had temporarily united the world. But the seeds of its eventual fracture had already been sown. The end, and the immortal legacy. History remembers the victors, but it fears the unstoppable. And even the unstoppable cannot escape time. The Mongol Empire, the largest contiguous land empire in history, would eventually face the inevitability that claims all great powers. Decline. The death of Genghis Khan in 1227 marked the beginning of this transformation. Some say illness, some say an accident. Others suggest battle wounds. The truth remains a mystery, hidden beneath the steppe where he was buried in secret. But the empire he built was far from finished. The Khanates of the Mongol world. Genghis's successors divided the empire into four major regions: the Yuan dynasty in China, the Ilkhanate in Persia, the Chagatai Khanate in Central Asia, the Golden Horde in Eastern Europe and Russia. Each Khanate was ruled by a descendant of Genghis Khan. Each was powerful, each was ambitious, but with multiple heirs came fragmentation. Loyalty to a single ruler waned, and the delicate unity Genghis had forged began to strain. Where there had been coordination, now there was rivalry. Where there had been obedience, now there was ambition. And where there had been vision, now there was division. Kublai Khan and the height of Yuan China. Among Genghis Khan's descendants, Kublai Khan emerged as the most formidable. He completed the conquest of the Song dynasty, establishing the Yuan dynasty, and becoming the first non-Chinese emperor to rule all of China. Under Kublai, trade thrived along the Silk Road. Cities like Khanbalik, modern Beijing, flourished. Cultural exchange reached unprecedented levels. Science, art, and technology spread further than ever. Yet even Kublai could not hold the empire together forever. The center grew strong, but the edges drifted away, and once unified, the empire would slowly fracture into separate powers. The final decline. Internal struggles, economic difficulties, plagues, and rebellions weakened the Khanates. By the late 14th century, the Mongol Empire had dissolved. Its vast territories became independent kingdoms or were absorbed by rising powers. The unstoppable had fallen, but its impact endured. The legacy. The Mongols may have lost political control, but their influence shaped the world for centuries. Global trade networks were strengthened under Mongol protection. Technologies, medicine, and ideas spread across continents. Diplomatic practices, law codes, and administrative systems inspired future empires. Even the genetic legacy of Genghis Khan persists, with millions of descendants alive today. The roads they built, the policies they enacted, and the connections they forged created a foundation for the modern world. The empire itself is gone, but the legacy remains, embedded in the veins of civilizations across Eurasia. History remembers the victors, but it fears the unstoppable. Genghis Khan, a boy abandoned to the steppe, rose to unite nomads, conquer kingdoms, and connect continents. The Mongol Empire, born from exile, hardship, and vision, may have fallen, but it reshaped the world forever. The empire is gone, but the legend remains. The unstoppable lives on.